Kuf Nun Aleph. Daar staat het woord um-numb. What um-numb means, in truth, however, after we have said all of that, that the neshama engages the nefesh habahamis, and it's outright warfare. As we said, this is like a hand-to-hand battle because it is one thing at a time. You deal with everything, with the seichel individually, the midas individually, and everything has to be confronted. At each interest, at each game. Otherwise, you're not accomplishing anything. This is the birur. And the capability for this confrontation and ultimately to overcome the challenge and to subdue the interest of the nefesh habahamis so that it be subservient and obeying the directives of nefesh halikis. The ability for that, the koyach for that comes not from those faculties that engage in battle. There's no win, so to speak, in that confrontation in itself. The decisive power that decides this battle is a higher power. It's called makif. Where in these koiches in the nefesh, a higher scent, a higher oil is brought forth. This higher oil is called the oil makif. And principally this is that during that confrontation, there is a recognition on all levels what the nefesh is representing, who he is fighting for. It is not merely for this limited victory. It is for the makif, for the etzem ha-nefesh itself. And that power, the etzem ha-nefesh, this sustains the nefesh throughout the battle, and ultimately this brings victory, because this is an overwhelming force, subduing the nefesh habahamis. In essence, to put it into, so to speak, our orientation, our terminology, there's a phenomenal difference between two people are fighting, and each is fighting for his own survival, for his own benefit. In comparison, that when one of these fighters has a much bigger inspiration, spirit, purpose, and reason for this fight. If the fight is merely for personal victory, there's always a thought, it's so big deal. But when you have something of this nature, of the Etzem, that's at stake, there you garner all the forces, all the koiches that are at your disposal, and then some. And this is the koyach. It's called the koyach makifim. Makifim is also an emanation of the nefesh. This emanation is not explainable. It's not presenting itself in a specific, in a limited fashion to confront one thing or another in RASHAB. It presents itself as the dynamic force behind this whole thing. The word dynamic means a total being. It is not for victory, it is not for self-aggrandizement. There's nothing, no self in this. There's a total reality. This is the makif. In the makifim, when it comes to makifim, it completely overwhelms the pnimim, the confrontation of Hashem. In the sense that you and Nefesh Habamis have no place, you have nothing to stand on. You want this, it's pleasant, it's good. How does it compare to this reality which I'm presenting you? This is able to literally subdue the Nefesh Habamis and put it in its place. There's something much greater at stake over here than what you are able to understand. This is the kochas makifim that provided for the nefesh, for the neshama, in its confrontation with Nefesh Habamis. With this confrontation, with this provision, the Nefesh Habamis at first simply succumbs, submits, and ultimately it actually accepts what the Nefesh Olikis stands for. This is what we discussed yesterday. It is necessary to reflect, to understand where this is coming from. Where despite the fact that this is a behemoth, but this behemoth is also a divine creation. There's a certain reality associated with this behemoth. This behemoth is not totally oblivious to the bigger picture. Even when you talk about fight for survival, survival means survival in the open, in the big world, not survival in its own confines. That is not the quest of Nefesh Habamis, which means it also recognizes that there is a bigger reality. And the meat of which, and the reason it recognizes this, is by virtue of the fact that this is where it's coming from. The very phenomenon of its existence is that there is a bigger reality. This is where it's coming from. And therefore, the RASHAB submits to the directive and the insistence of the Nefesh HaElokis. And this bigger reality, Nefesh HaBamis, you have no say in it. You don't know what this is about. So therefore, follow me. And this is where we're up to. And we underline and begins with the word um-numb. This is 5 lines from the bottom, 6 lines from the bottom. Um-numb, however, it may be true. The word um-numb is an interesting word. On the one hand, it means truth is, and on the other hand, it also says however. Although it's true that this aspect, that the Nefesh HaElokis has an effect on Nefesh HaBamis, and it is able to subdue it, is able to put it in its place by explaining and telling it that this is a completely different confrontation, different reality. You're out of your area. And here you, in order to participate, you have to be obedient.
You have to be
obedient. Obey.
Be obedient.
Zehu hakoil. This entire confrontation and ultimately the overpowering and the means by which it's put into place. Hakoil, all of that is bibchinas iskafio labat. Is in an aspect of iskafio. Iskafio means subjugation. Lavad, only. Which means that you have not really affected the Nefesh HaBamis. You made it submissive. Iskafia. You have put it into place. You have shown it that it has no understanding, no knowledge, no means of no say in this confrontation in reality. So you put it in its place. Just obey what I tell you. This is called iskafia. Even disobedience, as we explained in the last couple of days, comes as a result of the Nefesh HaBamis recognizing that this whole battle and confrontation takes place in a bigger arena. This is not just about me, as I explained before Moshe. Survival also means, for Nefesh HaBamis, survival means survival in a bigger reality, not just survival in its own skin. That's not survival. And here the Nefesh HaElokis affect the Nefesh HaBamis and convinces in a certain sense the Nefesh HaBamis that it should stay put in its own place. Let the Nefesh HaElokis take over here. This is called iskafia. However, this is called levad. Levad means just. It is not the full accomplishment. Just to keep the Nefesh HaBamis at bay and let the Nefesh HaElokis do its own thing is not the purpose of this confrontation. Omasha Kosuv, at the end of that line, Omasha Kosuv. But this what the Pasuk says after that. Unuson Hashem Elokecho biyodecho, and Hashem Elokecho will render him, your enemy, in your hand. This is the end of the Pasuk Kisetzi. Kisetzi al-Mecham alevecho. when you venture out into war, over your enemies, and Hashem will render him into your hand. In other words, the ultimate victory is not in your confrontation, but it is that Hashem renders him into your hand. So we explained the victory initially, the confrontation brings about this kafir. But then there is a final step, Hashem renders him into your hand, which means you actually capture him, you actually take him into your jurisdiction. So that's what we said initially, the effect is but ultimately Hashem will render him, will give him over in your hand. He will give him to your discretion, which means he will now become owned by you. And then he is owned by you, which means he is now participating in your activity. He's not just not objecting, not confronting you, but he's participating in your activity, in your hand. Zehu, this final step, the Pasuk says that the final step of the war is this is bibchinas is hapcho chasheicho dinachayah. This is the element of darkness being transformed into light. As we already discussed before, we're sitting on this page quite a while, that darkness in its essence is also godliness, is also light. And by working with it and putting it in its place, so to speak, the light that is contained in the darkness begins to shine, begins to surface. In simple terms, as simple as I can make it, darkness begins to recognize that it has as a purpose is to express something that can only be expressed to darkness. But it really has something greater to express. And the thing that it wants to express is that in the darkness there is also light. In the darkness there is also truth, the godly truth. This darkness is not the absence of godliness, it is a godliness being concealed in the darkness in order to challenge and to bring out the light that's contained within the darkness. This is called transformation of the darkness into light. Hainu, the Rebbe explains, Hainu, which means that the very mahus, the very reality, the very essence present of Nefesh HaBamis is nehepach, it is transformed l'toiv to good. This is really an amazing thing, that the Nefesh HaBamis, that is in essentially a mitzias in the world, a world in mitzias, it's transformed to recognize that really it, in essence, it is godly. And it is godliness that it's seeking. It's not seeking worldliness. The mahus, the very phenomenon, the very present of the Shabbat is transformed into good. Shezeh, where this final step, this is not incorporated and within it is contained in the koyach ha'odam, in the human koyach, me'atzmei, on its own. The human being, he has toiv. He has toiv. In order to transform the nefesh habamis from chashechot, from darkness into light, the nefesh habamis has to be given a sense that this light is a super light. It's not a light and worldly experience. Because as long as it's a worldly experience, it has its own worldly experience. As much as it can submit, it remains worldly. Means that darkness is transformed into light, which means that it's recognized and it surfaces that the darkness of the world is really in essentially godliness. We had over these days some discussion about this. I want to present a very simple, so simple it seems almost saying nothing, but this is a very significant statement. You're driving, let's say, on the road. The easiest thing to drive, the easiest way to drive is to drive straight down. Then you come to a turn. You can't drive straight. You have to slow down and maintain the turn. This slowing down seems to be confronting you and standing against you. Where are you going? You can't go further like this. However, when you take this turn, you realize that this turn is really what brings you to the goal, to the ultimate the ultimate place where you want to get to. So this darkness, this obstruction, is really nehoira, is really guiding you to where you want to go. This is the pshat, is hapach hasheichol in nehoira. If a person is interested just in his own experience of driving the car straight, so driving straight is a much easier thing. But if he's interested by this drive to get it to his goal, then this turn, this slowdown, this is part of the process. On the contrary, it guides him there in safety. This part of that which serves him. This is you have to take it clearly from a different vantage point. Nonetheless, this is the confrontation, the fight with the nefesh habamis. Nefesh habamis objects and refuses to do things that he's told to do. He's lazy, he's tired, he has other interests. But ultimately, after it's being subdued and after it's being directed and shown, then it recognizes that this whole battle is for its own good. It reveals its own inherent good. The whole time that he was objecting, he was objecting because he wanted to have this good. He wanted to have a good that is universal, a good that is not limited to one circumstance or another. In order to reveal, bring forth this kind of good, you have to be confronted in this milchama. At which point, it is no longer a question of submission. It sees only good everywhere where it looks. Let's take it on a human level. The human being has seichel and midas of intelligence. When his seichel is challenged and he's saying, okay, try to understand this, and he's given an opportunity, a chance to so to speak, bring forth his intelligent capacity, he's alive, he's appreciative. But when he's told to say these words, there is no intellectual challenge to that. So then, he loses interest. He cannot get involved with his koiches, with his seichel and midas, in this pronouncing of words. After that, he overcomes this, and he is exposed to the true value of saying these words. This is where he sees that chashecho, that this darkness, that these words, these simple words represent, is nehoira, is a profound light. With these words, he's actually connecting, relating, and expressing his connection to the Meibashter. This is just a very simple demonstration of the Inyan. This is where Chashecha is transformed into light, because this light is contained within that darkness. How is the light contained in that darkness? The greatest representation of light is when you presented the light the way it comes from its very source. This darkness is that it's not my appreciation, it's not my understanding, it is the presence of the king himself. This is a light that is overwhelming. This is where darkness is transformed into light. This is this hapech hashechel in the hill. It comes to the surface through this battle with the nefesh habahamis, where it's taught and directed to do that which you are told to do. And ultimately you realize that this that you are told to do, you were told by the King of Kings himself, and thereby he is also present in this action that you are doing. And this is where it becomes its hapcha. Chasheichot in here, darkness itself, actually is bringing forth light, bringing forth the highest and young molecules. And therefore the Mahus of Shabamis is transformed. The very essence of Shabamis is no longer looking for some kind of a personal satisfaction or personal accomplishment. He wants just the good itself, the divine good itself. Nothing to do with himself, with his accomplishment. This is not possible. It says, this is what's given from Mamil Maila. This is given to Nefesh Habahamis a recognition that really, all this time, he's really within the domain of a higher domain. Okay? the latter part of the 4 lines from the bottom. Ve'al derech. This is similar to what the pasuk says. Umol havaya lekecha sulevavcho. The Hashem will circumcise your heart. What does circumcision of the heart mean? The heart initially could be very self-contained, very self-indulgent. It's like the milot covered over with a membrane. And I only know that which is inside myself and not interested in anything else. I'm seeking only my own internal experience. This is called an orlo, a heart that is covered up with an orlo. It may be in bright light, it may be exposed to a greatness, and it is totally unaware of it. Because this membrane covers it, and he is experiencing everything internal to himself.
What's membrane?
Huh?
What's membrane?
A membrane is a skin. A skin.
Skin? Okay.
Like the Mila.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
And then, Hashem Aleikecho, after your avodah with the Nefesh HaBamis, before you confronted your own Nefesh HaBamis, then Hashem comes to help you in the next stage, in the final stage where you have to transform the Nefesh HaBamis. And then you have to remove this covering of the heart. This is a very challenging thing because a person is, the Nefesh HaBam is the natural intelligent person. How do I feel about it? This I feel about it, this is the verification that this is something which I appreciate, which is true to me. This is a heart that is covered up with the orla. After the confrontation and the Milchama with Nefesh HaBamis, then there is an assist milmailo. The final stage of this is that this is something which is done and a gift from milmailo, totally from above. All of a sudden, he has a completely different orientation, a different sense of reality. His sense of reality is not how he's in the world and how you understand these things from the world, from your vantage point. It's a completely different reality. There's only Elokus. And he removes all that covering. He does not need a protection from inside. He exposes himself totally, completely to the divine reality. This is what the says, Hashem ultimately is mal, is circumcised, which means opens up the heart. Okay, now the third line from the bottom. Shehu milmailo davko. This milo is exclusively milmailo, can only come and occur from above.
This is after the Ishapcha of the Behema, or this is it?
This is Ishapcha. This is Ishapcha because the Behema initially is internal to itself. The heart is covered up. But then when it opens up and it begins to function in the bigger reality.
So this is what we said before about biyadecha, that
Biyadecha, yeah. It's one that biyadecha in your hand, the hand of Nefesh Elokis. And then, and this is what it says, and this is accomplished from Milmaila. This is something which is given from above. You cannot do it on your own.
you cannot. This is like this final hishafcha cannot be accomplished, but the previous stage should be initiated below.
That's right. It's initiated below, but to fully accomplish it, to open up the heart, complete the heart. This is important. The heart. It's one thing to know it with intellect. This is what I want. The heart is very self-protective.
Like outside your reshus, sort of.
I only know what I feel. That's the heart. The heart cannot look far away. The heart sees only itself. What's inside its domain. This is hapcha, and he says, this is it's something which is accomplished milmaila. When a person all of a sudden doesn't recognize himself. It's a gift of mind. All of a sudden things make sense. He sees things that he couldn't fathom, he couldn't even imagine that he could see it.
Couldn't imagine.
That he could see it.
I don't.
Couldn't imagine that he can possibly see it. Because he's seeing it not from his own internal vantage point, seeing it from a different approach, from a different truth.
They're showing it to him.
They're showing it to him, but he sees it. This is it, right? I believe. Even though nobody is here. I don't mind going on. What do you say? There are 3 lines from the bottom. Right? Let's go until we cannot go any further. The Avedas ha'odom b'koyach hatzmei, because that which a person does Aveda b'koyach hatzmei with his own arsenal, who it consists only of mal tem and so on and so on. You should be mal, the covering of your heart, and the stubbornness of your heart. Shehi alidei ha'aveda, which is done through the Aveda Shapita Avodas. When you're applying your own reasoning and you force the heart to understand according to the reasoning that the Nefesh Elokis, that the Seichel provides. Avo, but Umol Havaya Lekecho, that last stage, when the meal is accomplished by Hashem Milmailo, Ho'inyan Ho'ahavo Shulamana Metamata.